Good evening, everyone. We are now live in Adobe Community Philippines for Layers and Masking 101 Beginner's Guide in Photoshop. So, inviting you to please do like and share our live stream and inviting you to join our groups. Adobe Community Philippines, like and follow us in Facebook. To all educators out there, we have Adobe Educators Philippines, and to all creatives, we have Digital Creatives Philippines. Okay, so I'll be giving you a few minutes to register, and we'll see you after 5 minutes. Okay, I'd like to invite everyone to add at least 25 new members in facebook.com/groups/Adobe Photoshop Philippines to have a LinkedIn career and learning subscription. So we'll be giving away 3 months LinkedIn Learning Career Premium and learning subscription to those who will add at least 25 new members in Adobe Photoshop User Group Philippines. Okay. And Adobe Photoshop User Group Philippines is also in LinkedIn. Okay, I'd like to introduce our instructor this evening, a multimedia enthusiast. I'll be adding Mr. Raymond Mapalad. Good evening, Sir Raymond. Good evening, Sir Raymond.
Good evening, Miss Nelsie, and good evening, everyone as well, or good morning, wherever part of the world you may be. And
Good evening, Sir Raymond.
good evening, Miss Nelsie, and good evening, everyone as well, or good morning, wherever part of the world you may be. And
Good evening, Sir Raymond.
good evening, Miss Nelsie, and good evening, everyone as well, or good part of the world you may be. And
Good evening, Sir Raymond.
good evening, Miss Nelsie, and good evening, everyone as well, or good part of
Okay, so let's just fix the audio. Okay, so while we are waiting for our instructor, please do invite your friends to join us in facebook.com/groups Adobe Photoshop Philippines. Okay? And of course, don't forget to register for today's session. Okay? So we'll be having a raffle draw before we end this training. Okay. So while we are fixing our audio, okay, to those who doesn't know about LinkedIn Learning, here's a short video for you.
The practice of job searching hasn't changed much. Networking, referrals, demonstrating skills, and so forth. But the way we do it has. Today, it can all happen in one place, and that's LinkedIn. It connects the world's professionals and creates economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And LinkedIn Learning combines our high-quality, expert-led learning content with this LinkedIn data to make those professionals more successful.
I've been working in higher education for over 10 years, and I've never seen a tool that provides what LinkedIn Learning can. It reveals in-demand skills using data, AI, and machine learning. We're able to deliver relevant, customized micro-learning content that prepares learners for the future. It's a strategic complement to an institution's curricula.
LinkedIn becomes a hub for students, alumni, faculty, and staff. They can learn, connect, engage, and strengthen their professional brand.
All of us were students once too, which is why we're so passionate about student success. We want to see them advancing their skills and building their professional brand. Employers are going online to find new talent. Students need to create an online presence early to give them a competitive advantage. So let's take a look and see how this works.
First, a student creates a profile. It can be a great place to interact with peers and professors.
Throughout her education, LinkedIn Learning supplements classroom learning, and online course recommendations help her continuously develop micro skills on her own.
She posts course completions and class projects to her LinkedIn profile. It becomes an online portfolio to showcase her academic career.
Her network grows as she interacts with the broader community, engages with thought leaders, and comments on posts and articles.
As graduation approaches and she finds a field of interest, alumni connections help her with internship and job opportunities in that field.
The learning, insights, and connections empower her to enter the workforce.
As your students and staff interact with the LinkedIn ecosystem, we provide student outcome data that perfectly complements your institution's own internal data. It's a mutually beneficial opportunity. Looking at both data sets together, we're able to close skills gaps, enhance outcomes, and foster lifelong learning. Ultimately, differentiating your institution for current and future students.
Together, we're able to invest in the growth and development of individuals, to empower students to build their professional brand and prepare them for the careers of tomorrow.
To help faculty, staff, and alumni elevate their careers.
We're here to partner with you. Let's guide lifelong learners to be more productive and successful in the global workforce.
Okay, so let's try. Hi, Sir Raymond. Sir Raymond, muted ka po ata. Good evening. Okay, good evening, everyone. Okay, I'd like to know where you are watching from. So, can you please comment down in the comment section? For example, you are watching in or from um, Pasay City, Pasig, or if you are outside Philippines, please do post it in our comment section.
With Adobe Creative Cloud, you can view, access, share, and present your creative work from any smartphone, from any tablet, from anywhere. You can actually access and view your Photoshop files and see the different layers and turn on and off layer states. You can flip through the artboards on your Illustrator files, and you can page through InDesign files as well. You can also share and present your creative work directly from the Creative Cloud from any browser. All you have to do is send a link to clients, colleagues, friends who are anywhere, and let them view and comment on your work from any web browser. So you can take your creations from Adobe Ideas or Photoshop Touch or Proto, and you can access them directly on your desktop in your Creative Suite for future editing. And you can take those Creative Suite files and bring them back into your tablet so you can incorporate them into the work you're doing on your tablet, on the go, wherever you are. With the Creative Cloud, you can view, access, share, and present your creative work wherever you are, no matter what device you have with you.
Okay, hello to Sir Angelo Ramos from Tarlac. Yan, si Sir Aryan J. Watching from Manila, and Kevin watching from Naga City, Bicol. Okay, let's try to add our instructor. Hi, Sir Raymond.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, okay. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Just had to work out some kinks in the tech, and that's the thing with tech. But in any case, good evening again. Okay, and okay, I'm sorry. The audio went off. Anyway, it's back now. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you, sir.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I
Hello?
actually have to toggle two
Hello, we
browsers.
can hear you, sir.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I see that there's a delay. So
Okay,
I'm just going to work.
hello?
I have to toggle. I'm just going to
Hello, we
browsers.
can hear you, sir.
Okay. At this point, let me just go ahead and start and saying good evening again or good morning, whichever part of the world you may be. So this is a tutorial about layers and masking, hence the title, Layers and Masking 101, the beginner's guide to Photoshop. And first, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Raymond F. Mapalad. I'm a Photoshop enthusiast, although that's not really my profession, but it's something that I've loved, and it's well, Photoshop and design in general, and it's something that I've been working towards. Okay, currently, um, I've been using Photoshop for months now since I got the an updated PC. And as I've mentioned, this tutorial is aimed at beginners. So let me just go ahead and share my screen now. And veteran listeners, okay, I'm just mentioning that the ones that I may be sharing may be very basic. So I'm just giving everyone a heads up there. Okay, so with regards to Photoshop, it was it's been around since 1988, which was created by Thomas and John Knoll, I believe. And yeah, I was around during that time, but I do know a lot of people that weren't born yet. But that actually speaks to Photoshop's staying power and longevity. And then Photoshop, besides Adobe Acrobat, of course, which is for PDF, is basically the face of Adobe, at least as far as the creative softwares are concerned. Illustrator is almost as popular. InDesign, After Effects, Premiere, they're popular as well in their own right, and of course they have their own utility. But Photoshop is basically the poster child. When one says Adobe Photoshop is the first one that comes to mind. And about that speaks highly about the other Adobe creative softwares, which are mostly almost all of them are industry standards in their own creative field. And other than and of course, Photoshop, as we know, is a photo editing software. More specifically, it's a raster editing slash manipulation software. Well, raster versus vector is for it's a type of image formats, but Photoshop mostly specializes in raster, not vector. And then other, of course, from Photoshop's inception, other photo editing softwares have been around or have been inspired by Photoshop, but still, Photoshop, in my opinion, remains the most robust. And even though it has a learning curve, it's fun. as far as job openings are concerned, I can only speak for job openings here in the Philippines, although there may be some similar cases in other parts of the world. Whenever, well, mostly for creatives or design, whenever there's a desired or required photo editing skill for a software, then Photoshop is more times than not listed. But again, that speaks to the reputation created by Photoshop. And of course, it kind of makes sense since most know about the software task can be passed and the workflow will be more efficient, especially in team settings. Okay, so that is actually my brief and long-winded introduction with Photoshop. We can actually begin. So first, before we go to the UI, here is the home page. What you can see on the screen right now is what shows up the very first time that you open Photoshop. Nothing in there. We see the drag and drop file, and then, which you can certainly do so if you have already saved files or images. And then on the left, of course, we do see the open, which is the same as the Control O as with most softwares, where it will bring up a dialog box, show the most recent folder where you've saved items on and select it. But in this case, I will go ahead and create a new project. Okay, in this case, what's being shown by default is the this dialog box. I mean, it shows the new document, which has the preset details. Okay, I'm not going to be discussing all of them, but the very basic ones that has more importance is the width, the height, and then the pixels. Well, in this case, sometimes it shows this measurement drop down. Sometimes shows centimeters, but indeed, pixels are mostly the standard that almost everyone uses. Of course, there's the orientation. It's the blue highlighted, of course, is landscape, which is the default. But of course, you can go ahead and choose the portrait if you so desire. Then there's the, of course, other choices like the artboards, the resolution, the pixels in inch, the color mode, RGB, CMYK, the difference for printing, and of course, digital, 8-bit, 16-bit, and 32-bit. And for the background contents, basically, once we get to the interface, the main display there will be colored white, where normally we can see everything. But you can go ahead and switch it to black as a default if you want, or any of these choices. And of course, there's the other advanced options like color profile and pixel aspect ratio. But in this case, for file size saving purposes, I will be selecting the 1280 by 720. So let me just go ahead and select that and then hit create. Okay, now we are at the user interface. And although Photoshop has evolved through the years, and there have been, of course, obviously minor changes, the overall layout still remains the same. First of all, is indeed the canvas, the one that I was talking about earlier, which was defaulted to white, and then you can choose any color that you'd like. This is basically the most important part of the UI, because this is where you see everything, whether it be a photo or whether you're creating images or layers rather, or editing through tools. It's all in here in the canvas, which is also named as the workspace area. Okay, and the one on top, of course, is the menu bar, where it has the file, edit, image, layer type, select, filter, 3D, windows, and help, which is actually which is the same as most softwares or even folders if you're using Windows. By the way, I am using Windows, so you will hear me use the term control instead of command. And indeed, if it's for a Mac, then you can just go ahead and hit command. And of course, it doesn't have that Photoshop menu, which is available on a Mac. Okay, the next one will be the toolbar, which is this column on the left. Okay, this is basically where we can go ahead. We have different tools in order to either create or manipulate the image that will be displayed. The one at the default, for example, is the move tool. Below that is the rectangular marquee tool. And then below that is the polygonal lasso tool. And then object selection tool and so forth. And you may notice that once we hover the mouse for a bit, it gives a preview, it shows the name, and then there's the letter. Those are basically shortcuts. So whenever we're working and I want to go to the move tool, I can go ahead and select V. I wanted to go to the rectangular marquee tool, I can go ahead and just press M. Okay, and moving on to the next part of the UI is the options bar or control panel. Although this is relative to what is selected on the toolbar, it changes. As you can see, these changes depending on what tool that I have selected. So it's all relative to that. It basically gives more options to the tools that are located here. And I forgot to mention on the toolbar, you may notice that there's the arrow on the lower lower right hand corner. So that basically means once you press left click and hold it for a while, it would give the other choices. This one's a better example. So for example, this one has three choices, which the default is the lasso tool. And then there's the polygonal lasso tool and magnetic. And whenever we select any of those choices, it replaces the one that was normally displayed, but it still keeps the same shortcut. In this case, I'll bring it back to the lasso tool. Okay, now at the bottom, we do see the status window, which of course gives us the zoom percentage indicator. We'll get to zooming later. And then right next to it is the visual aid. And then on this chevron button, once we click on that, actually the default one that's displayed is the resolution, which I've selected as 1280 by 720. But I did choose to go to document sizes, which I will be explaining more on that later. And then finally, if we look at the right, these are the panels. Okay, first up is the one on the thinner column. You do see the history here. Right now, there's nothing on it, but basically what this is once I do several tasks, they would all show up in here. So if I don't feel like doing an undo several times or doing a redo, then I can go ahead and just navigate it. Okay, so next up are okay, I'll click on that again to minimize it, or to hide it rather. Okay, on the next panel here, it's the color panel, and right next to them are the swatches panel, gradients. They're mostly grouped based on how they're similar. Same thing with the ones below it. Primarily is the properties panel, but adjustments and libraries panel is also here. And finally, the one that we'll actually be discussing is the layers panel here at the bottom. Okay, and about the user interface, another thing to note. Yes, another thing to note is that with these panels, you can almost do whatever you'd like. So, for example, I can go ahead and place libraries in here. Now, they categorically might not belong to the other, but it's something that you can do if you do so wish. And I do see, of course, others bringing the toolbar icon. Sorry, one moment. The toolbar icon right over here. And then you can go ahead and some even bring the layers panel right in the middle. And then if, well, basically you can customize this to based on how you use them and what's most important. Although if you notice here in the window, these are all the available options and not all of them are checked, since indeed they can be overwhelming. But in this case, you can, for example, if you have a layout that you love, you prefer, then you can go ahead and save it. And well, that's one way of opening it. But here, there's the on the Windows menu, there's the Workspace, and then there's the new Workspace, and then you can go ahead and just name it whatever you like. And the next time that you go in here, it has, well, it would have that as a choice. Well, of course, now it's selected, but I'm actually just going to give any other examples, like if you're more into painting or drawing, or if that's your thing, you can go ahead and select that, and particular panels will be displayed that fits more into that criteria. But well, aside from Windows and Workspace, you can also click this icon here near the top right, and then select the whatever you'd like. In this case, I'm just going to go with the default, but since I've edited this, then I can go ahead and I'm going to work with the very default one. So I'm going to go to Reset Essentials. Okay, so there we go. Okay, by pressing F, then of course we can go ahead and view other modes, like a larger area here. If you'd like to go full screen, here it is. To bring everything back, then here it is. But in any case, let us now get started with the layers. Okay, first of all, if you've noticed on the white background, on the layers panel, it does reflect, there's a rectangle that reflects what's in here, and it's background and it's locked. That basically means that it is locked. You almost can't do anything about it. Let me go ahead and just give you an example. Going to duplicate the layers, which we'll get to that topic later. And I basically can't move that, just remains on the background. So let me just go ahead and clear those. Okay, well, what I can do is I can go ahead and click this lock icon, and it becomes unlocked, and the name from background becomes layer 0. Okay, so this will be our base layer. This one counts as a layer, it's just one. And of course, well, we can, before we proceed, let me just go ahead and show you one more thing. You see this eye icon. Once we click on it, the white becomes a checkerboard of white and gray, small whites and gray squares. That basically means that there's nothing on it. It's transparent. In this case, that's what we're seeing because we've hidden away the white. So let me just go ahead and bring that back up. Okay, to start, I actually don't want to use the color white. I want to use a different color. So what I'll be doing is I can go to select all, and you'll see the marching ants lines in here. Okay, if I can, or there's also a shortcut, I can just deselect it, which is Control D. I can press Control A, same thing. And then right now, I can go ahead and, well, I would have to, in this case, make sure that the marquee tool is selected. Right now, I can go ahead and right click, and there is a fill here, which is mostly for coloring. Okay, one thing to note about these two is these are the foreground and the background. Of course, by default, the foreground is black. So let me just hold. And then the background is white. And then we can go ahead and switch them up here by pressing the these two lines that has arrows. And okay, I've inverted them, so this time the foreground, well, it's already white, so the background, it's black. But I actually don't plan to use white or black. I just had to show that. And I actually plan to use the color yellow. So I'm going to go here. Is basically the hue bar. Okay. This larger box, of course, reflects the how bright and how dark they are, and their opacity. So in this case, I'm going to select the maximum here. And as you can see, it is reflected. So now when I right click and go to fill, and this time go to color. Oh, my bad. This is where we actually do it. Same principle. We select the yellow here, and then we hit OK. And OK. And now we do have a yellow background. Now for this one, if I'd like to just bring this back to default, then there's this smaller icon that reflects this, and I can just click on that. Okay, so we have our yellow background. We still have our marching ants, so we can go ahead and deselect that. Which is in this option, and then Control D, that is the shortcut. So we have one layer, and again, we can go ahead and hide it. Okay, so I'll be creating another layer, and we can do that by selecting the new layer here, or it has a shortcut of Control Shift N. It gives you this dialog box. You can hit OK, or if you look at this part here, lower right next to the trash bin, there's the plus inside a box. Once we click on it, then a new layer is created. And whenever a new layer is created, it will be created on the one that's highlighted. In this case, we just have one layer, so that's why it showed up on top. But if we do have other layers, then we selected a layer in the middle, then and create a new layer, then the new layer will show up directly on top of what was previously selected. Okay, so we now have this new layer, so I'm going to select that. In this case, I will be selecting the brush tool, and now I will be selecting the red color here, If you look at the circle, that's actually the area of painting. So that's an example. If I were to, of course, increase the size to 100, becomes bigger. Anyway, we can go ahead and undo it. We can go to the edit, undo, or we can do Control Z, which is the same as with most softwares. Although unfortunately, Control Y doesn't do the redo. The redo here is Shift, Control, and Z, so it's one more button. Okay, in this case, I can also select the hardness or softness. If I make it hard, it's more solid. And then if I'm actually content with 34, it has a more feathery look, or a softer look rather. And rather than hovering the mouse here all the time whenever we make brush selections, which also, by the way, also applies to erasers, we can just simply hit the bracket icon to resize them. The left bracket shrinks and the right bracket enlarges. Okay, so I'm going to shrink it until it goes to 70. Go ahead and now 60 and 50, and I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start painting. Okay, that is actually good enough for my example. So you see the mouse change because I pressed the V button, which is the move tool. And since this layer is selected, well, I can go ahead and just move it wherever I'd like. So I'd actually like to rotate that for a bit. So I'd actually have to rotate. I would have to go to the transform here in the edit, and then there's the rotate option, and then if you look at the pointer, it now switches to this rounded line with the arrows, and that basically means we can rotate it. Okay, that's actually good enough for me. And as you can see, the degrees of rotation is showed. In this case, it's negative 12.3 degrees. Okay, I'm going to stop at that. Then I'm going to hit V. Or sorry, it's selected. So I'm sorry, I would have to check on this first or hit the enter button. Okay, and now it defaults to B, which was the one that was previously selected. Okay, so this is our second layer. Okay, I'm going to create the third one. And this time I'm going to go ahead and select this box, which has the rectangle tool, which has this shortcut of view. And as you can see, as I'm dragging the mouse with the left click being held, I can go ahead and create a rectangular shape, whichever I'd like. It's not doesn't have to be proportioned. It's distorted. And the W and H, well, the W is for width, and the H is for height, and the PX is for pixels. So like this one is 262 width. Sorry, not I meant width, and then height of 154 pixels. Okay, I can go ahead and select that, and it would fill. But what if I'd like to have both the height and width the same? That is actually possible. I just need to hold the shift button to constrain that. So regardless of how I move the mouse, the width and the height will always be the same. So I can go ahead and let go of that. And of course, by default, it would go ahead and allow us to rotate it. But since we already have red here, I don't want to have this be red as well. So I'm going to change the color, and you can see the fill right here in the control panel. I can go ahead and click on that and select any other color. In this case, I am going to select blue. You see the pointer changes here. We just need to select that. Okay, great. And if obviously these are to change the size, and we can distort that as well once it's here, or we can also constrain it. So let me just shrink this for a bit. And these circles they basically soften the edges of the square up until it actually becomes a circle. But in this case, I'm just going to I'm going with the square with the hard edge. Okay, so I am happy with that. So I am going to move that here. Actually, the square is still too big, so let me just go ahead and I selected, by the way, I did a shortcut to go to the rectangular tool. That's why all of these indicators popped up. So let me go ahead and constrain it, shift, and then adjust it. Again, if you have any comments or questions, you can just go ahead and post them in the chat. Okay, just a little more. There, I think they're proportions, so I'm just going to move this for a bit. Okay, so basically we have 3 layers. And then we can go ahead and toggle. The way layer works is that the ones that are on top is always stacked, is always the one that has the most visibility. Hence the blue on top, then next is the red, and then the yellow. If we can also drag the layers, so if I were to raise the yellow, it hides the other 2. But I can go ahead and hide it, and you can see the blue and the red and the and nothing behind them. Since it's the checkerboard is transparent, I can go ahead and drag the left. We just need to look for that those 2 blue lines and let go. And this time the red overlap. Sorry, the red is over the blue. Okay, but let me just go ahead and undo that. And okay, this is what I'm talking about. So you can also do an undo here. Okay, I did that earlier. Okay, I switch it back to what it was, and then I am going to hide that. Okay, the next type of layer that I will be creating is text. In this case, I can just go ahead and select an area. It will show this text. And the reason why it popped up right behind the blue and the red is when I clicked on the text button, the one that was selected was the layer 0 or the yellow background. But I can go ahead and fix that and make that on top. I'll just drag it here. It says lorem. I'll switch it to well, let me just Control A, delete, and then declare everything that maybe not visible, and then hit text and type text. And since this is a text type layer, it basically functions like any type property where you can use the keyboard to type things and clear them off by backspace and such. And of course, on the top, especially if you're familiar with, for those that are mostly working with word processors, we do have the fonts, we do have the styles, and we do have the size. So in this case, I'll just leave it as it is. And although one thing to note is once you are on the text, it's actually not ideal or advisable to hit the shortcut like V or M or any of these shortcut buttons, shortcut letters on the tools, since if I push the V, it's going to type V instead of switching us to the move tool, and even enter it. So in this case, we really would have to be safe, we would have to hit the check button. And now I can type V, and there you go. We go back to the move tool. So I'm just going to move this in the middle. So now this is stacked on top of each other. Okay. Another thing to note here is we can also control the transparency. It's called, or the opacity rather, or the visibility of the layer. We can either drop down here and then select it. As you can see, the text layer becomes translucent. And then if it's a 0, it's basically like being hidden with the eye icon turned off. Okay, and we can also just manually type the percentage. Or here's a cool trick. Once we hover the mouse over the opacity, then you'll see like well, it's so small, but there are 2 arrows on the left and the right of the pointed finger. And once what happens is that once we hold the left click and then move that around, it increases or decreases the transparency. If we move left, it becomes more transparent. If we move right, it becomes more solid, but let's leave that at 100. Okay, since also this is I'll go back to this text layer. Since this is a text layer, of course, you can just, with this selected, of course, we can just go ahead and double click on it and type whatever we want. But we also have the option of rasterizing this layer. Okay, what happens is that, let me just undo that to show you one thing. Okay, with a regular text layer, this one's a letter T, which specifically means it's a text layer. It visually helps us identify what it is. But once I rasterize it, right click, rasterize height, it becomes this dot, but it's basically reflecting the text in miniaturized form. So that means it's an image. We can no longer type on it, and it's something that can be erased, as you can see here, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, so moving on. Let me just go back to the move tool. Okay, I'm going to, the next layer that I will be creating is that I will be adding rather, is an image. So at this point, I'm going to hit Control O, open an image, and then I'm going to select this card, very common card here. And as you can see, it opens up a different tab, just like you would with any browsers. And as with browsers, you can go ahead and select Control Tab to toggle them, since of course you can work on multiple works or projects at the same time if you're that good. And then Control Shift and Tab to back toggle or toggle backwards, although there's only 2 of them, so they would just show the same thing. But in any case, what I will be doing, of course, since this is a background, I would have to unlock it, like what I did with the yellow earlier, with the yellow background. And then I'm going to drag this, don't worry about that checkerboard. I will drag this into this tab that we're working on, and then I would have to drag it into the workspace, the canvas, and let go, and it's here. Okay, so I no longer need this, so I'm just going to be clearing this out. Save changes to Adobe Photoshop document, no. Okay, now since we do have the this highlighted, okay, so let me just go ahead and resize this. In this case, I selected Control T, since that's that's the free transform. And basically it allows us to resize and rotate. In this case, I will be resizing it. Okay, it's constrained. And then let me make sure that's in the middle. Okay, so that is in the middle. Okay, hit the check or hit enter, and then we do have the 5 layers. Okay, since those are actually the 5 layers that we'll be working with, the next item that I will be discussing is how to rename them. And sadly, for those used to renaming files on folders, F2 doesn't work here. If we select that, we would have to double click on the word itself in order to rename it. Like, for example, this one will be the yellow background layer. Just going to put the colors in here, even if it's a long name for convenience. And I'm going to put the layer because I feel like that. I feel like it. And then next up, and again, don't double click on the space since it's not going to rename. Okay, and double click on the name. This will be the red brush layer. Okay, next up is the rectangle, but looks more like a box. So and it's blue, so I'm going to name it the blue box layer. Okay, next one is obviously just text, so it's text layer. And then for this one, I could put an image layer, but I actually prefer, since it's a king on a card, I would put in king's layer with an apostrophe. Okay, so we do have the 5 layers to work with. And then we can go ahead and move on. Okay, one thing to note here is that earlier I've mentioned about zooming. I'm sorry, about the zoom indicator. And to actually zoom in the work, we hit the control and the plus sign, okay? And then, okay, we can do that repeatedly. If we by the way, when I said hit, I meant hold down. And then if we hold down control and then the minus sign, that zooms out. And okay, there are other things to note. And by the way, once you zoom in, it does show the percentage. This one is 200%. Okay. One thing to note is if we hold down control and press 0, it stretches the image to to maxim to maximize the canvas, whether it's vertical or horizontal. And then if we hit control 1, it brings that down to 100%. Okay, now this may seem smaller because this is 720p, but if this were a large part and it's like the size of 4K, then its 100% would be way larger. And at that point, control 0 might be the preferred. In this case, I prefer 100%, so it doesn't get too overwhelming. And another way of zooming it is holding down the Alt button, and then move the rolling pin upwards to zoom in and downwards to zoom out. Okay, but here, and of course, once it's zoom in, we do see 2 scroll bars, one to toggle up and down, one to toggle left and right. But of course, if you're working with a really large canvas with a lot of layers, that is time consuming. So what I will go do here is, by the way, let me go ahead and default this. Sorry about that. We can select the hand tool or H. It brings that up, and what that basically does is just allow us to move the layer around by, of course, clicking it and dragging it. Or what we can do is, let me go ahead and disable that, and we can what I meant is, let me go ahead and switch to another tool. And we can actually temporarily enable the hand tool by pressing the, by holding the space bar. As you see, it's the regular one, but when I hold the space bar, then becomes the hand, and we can do the same thing. And then once we let go, it becomes the move tool again. But in this case, once again, let me go ahead and bring it back to 100%. As you can see right now, it's 233.85%. So let me go ahead and hit Control 1. Okay, next up is I'm going to be discussing how to duplicate layers. And there are a variety of ways to do that. And let me go ahead and show you a number of them. Of course, if you know more, then you can go ahead and put that in the comments. Okay, first, I'm going to highlight the yellow layer. I'm going to right click it. There's the duplicate layer choice here. And okay, this dialog box appears, and it's going to, it will, of course, ask us to rename the layer. It says yellow background layer copy, which makes sense. Okay, I'm not going to rename it to anything. I'm just going to leave it at that. So it's yellow. Okay, now next for the red brush layer, I am going to go to the layer menu, and then the duplicate layer is also here. Gives the same dialog box, and again, I'll just hit OK. And for this one, the blue layer, this one is a shortcut that will use both the mouse and the keyboard. So I'm going to hold down the Alt button, and then I'm going to also slightly move it upwards, not to the point where it overrides the layer on top, but once we do see those two lines, we can go ahead and let go, and then the blue layer copy is introduced right on top of the of its source. And for this one, for the text, okay, I'm going. It's something similar, but there's a uniqueness to this, and let me just go ahead and show you. I'm going to hold down the Alt button as well, but this time I'm going to move it slightly downwards, and you will see those same two blue lines underneath it. I let go, and there's the text layer copy, but if you've noticed, it's introduced at the bottom. So, but in this case, I'm just going to move it back to the top anyway. And then for the king here, there's I'll just use the keyboard, and I've done this earlier on the very first example. It's Control J, and then there's the copy. And then if I were to make a copy again, Control J, then it would display King's Layer copy 2. There's no number 1 here, but again, you can go ahead and make those copies should you choose. But visually, if you look at them, they're still aligned. Maybe the red one got a bit thicker, but the thing about that is once they're introduced, they occupy pretty much the same space as their source. So, well, I'm actually I will be deleting the yellow background layer copy, since the default itself covers the entire canvas. And to do that, I can just either drag it to the trash bin or hit backspace, or delete. Visually, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, now I'm going to select the red copy, and then I'm going to move that, and as you can see, there it is. Same thing with the blue. Going to move that. Same thing with the text. And same thing with the king's layer. So one copy I'll bring here. And okay, let me just go ahead and show you one thing. There's also another way to duplicate layers. And then that would also involve me holding Alt, but my mouse won't be at the layers panel, but rather here on the canvas. I hit the hold button, I hold left clicked, and then I move that, and it duplicates the that layer that it duplicates that this image layer. So this becomes king layer copy 2. Okay, so far we have the 4 original layers and their copies, and well, one of them has 2 copies. The next one that I will be discussing is the auto selection of the move tool. If you've noticed, as I was moving all of these outwards, I selected them one by one. If you're working with other softwares, like for example presentation softwares that would allow you to put in a lot of or insert and paste a lot of images, you can just move them at will by pushing the holding down the left click and then just moving them around. And there's actually a way to do that, and with the move tool selected, one of the choices on its control panel will be the auto select. Okay, once we do that, then it would function as though, as with those other programs. We go ahead and hold down the click button on a specific layer, move that, and then hold down the click button here on this other one, and then move that. And the on the layers panel, they adjust automatically. I'm going to select the blue here right now. The one that's selected is the King's layer copy, but once I click on the blue, there you go. It's on the blue box layer copy. Okay, although this can get work faster, and again, it would be your choice, whichever method that you prefer. Personally, I still prefer the one where this is turned off, and you would have to move that manually, only to get a more focused movement of layers. And for example, if I have this text, I actually don't even need to click on that. I can just click anywhere and move it. Which isn't the same if the auto select is chosen. Okay. However, if you're actually used to doing both, or if you want to do both rather, there is a choice to turn on the auto select temporarily, just like with the space bar and the hand button, and like what you're seeing here. Let go of that. This time I'm just going to hold the control button and this becomes selected. So right now, it's just like having an auto select. I let go of that and it's turned off. Okay, and okay, so I'm going to, with regards to, again, the move tool, one of those potential disadvantages. So let me go ahead and go to this text layer copy here. Okay, I've created 7 copies, so I'm actually going to, well, this time I will be selecting this Okay, I'll move one here, and move one here, move one here, another one here, and then here, and then here. If you're working on a project that has uh, that has clutter of similar things, and assuming that they're even smaller than this, however, you would still need a mental map of it. Then, although you can move them faster with the auto select turned on, it might be a bit better to also consider if it's to a point where you would have to rename them one by one, to keep track of them. It might be at that point a good idea to also stick with the default. But in this case, if they're not too cluttered, then you can just go ahead and choose the auto select. And with fewer layers, then indeed the default method is maybe more ideal. Okay, and now since we do have a lot of layers, as you can see here, and what if I would just like to see one of the red layers, but I don't want to see the others? It would be a pain to have to click on them one by one. So there's actually a workaround for that. So let me go ahead and make sure that everything's visible first. Okay, I can just hold down the Alt button, and then I will go ahead and click on the eye. And as you can see, everything disappears, leaving only this particular layer, the red brush layer copy, the one that I've selected. Even the yellow background layer becomes transparent. It's hidden away. But once I click, Alt click back on that, everything shows up. And here's another neat thing. Okay, click on that. That's the only thing that shows up. But what if I only wanted the blue one? Then I'll click that, and it's the only one that's shown. And with regards to the visibility eye, again, the layer doesn't always have to be selected. You can go ahead and just click whichever you choose, and it'll go there. Okay, so here now I'm at the text, and then once I click it again, everything goes back. Okay, next up, we will be discussing the multiple layer selection. Okay, so if the way to do that, of course, well, you can go ahead and hit Control and then hit a layer and then hit another, and then press another one. Although that's time consuming, especially if there's more layers than this. So one quick way of doing that is just first click on this one, for example, number 2, copy number 2, and then I will hold the Shift button and click all the way to copy number 7, and they're all highlighted. Or conversely, I can go ahead and just click on 7 first, hold down the Shift key, and then click on number 2, and they are highlighted as well, this time from top to bottom. And okay, why would we group layers? Well, we can group them for a lot of things. Okay, well, actually, let me, okay, sorry. I'll let Like in this instance, I'll group them, but I actually don't want them, so I'm going to delete them. And hitting the delete button deletes them in unison. Okay, and then I will actually be grouping the others. So if only for me to demonstrate that they can actually be colored as well. So in this case, we can go ahead and just hold down the control button to select them one by one, like we would do with files on on a on a folder when we're selecting multiple files. Okay, if we prefer, it doesn't. Of course, we don't need to select the one that's directly next to it. But in this case, I'm selecting both reds. If I right click on it, one of the choices at the bottom gives us a way to color them. And I will choose red, and you will see those indicator on the eye here, on the corner of the eye. And then same thing, I'm going to select the blue, control, select this, right click, blue. And then for the text, I'm just going to select gray. Okay, sorry. I continue holding down the control button there. So I'm just going to do it with these three. Then I'm going to group them into violet, purple, and well, let me just go ahead and recolor this yellow just to make sure that they're all color coded properly. Okay, the next thing that we're going to discuss is merging layers. Okay, so in this case, I'm actually going to select the originals. Well, except for the yellow one, the red, the blue, the text, and the king. Okay, so we have 4 layers selected, and then I right click. By the way, we have to right click on any of the selected layers, not the ones that are not. And then from here, we can convert this to smart objects. And take note of the size here. It says 21.8 MB, so that is actually the size. And once and here we would merge the layers. So as you can see, the previous one, it's now a singular layer. So if we move them, they are in unison. We can hide them together. And they all get affected together if we do something like this. Okay, and if you look at the file size, it now has shrunken to 15.6 MB. So this is one of the this is an advantage of one of the advantages of having the merge layer. The only thing here is that it's destructive. That means that unless you create copies of the other ones, then these cannot be edited back, especially if you assume that the other ones are not here. So there's actually another way of grouping the layers with more versatility. Let me just go ahead and undo that. Okay, so I'm going to select them again, control this, 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 and this. And this time I can go ahead and link them. Okay, so basically they also move together. They're also a group. However, once we toggle the visibility, they're actually not together. Okay, and if you look at the file size, it's still 21.8. So And the thing here is, even though they're linked, for example, let me go ahead and select one of the red ones with a link. No, they actually do move in unison. Okay, an even better way, let me just go ahead and undo all of this. Okay, there we go. An even better way of merging them together is with layer groups, by grouping them. We can, this time I'm going to select the copies. Okay, so copy the text. And then with these selected, and take note of the stacking order. Red at the bottom, then blue on top, and then the text, and then the king. I can hit control, I can either press this folder icon or hit control plus G, and this folder group one shows up. It replaces the king's layer, since that was the very top in its stacking order. And as you can see, that order is maintained. It actually doesn't matter which one we select first. If we group it, then it's still stacked that way. Okay, let me undo that. Or you can simply hit the folder icon. It shows up on top since nothing is selected. But if I were to select this and then hit the folder icon, it does show up in the middle. Let me put that on top anyway. Okay, the difference here is that you can go ahead and drag items into the folder, but okay, so in this case, I'm going to drag the blue first, and then the red, and then this one, and then this one. The difference now is that it whatever you drag last will be at the top, and whatever you dragged in first will be at the bottom. So the newer one is the one that's introduced at the top, like this, like the second copy here. Okay, so now that they're all grouped, in this case, none of them really overlaps with the others. So, but if you do prefer this, for example, if I were to prefer this stacking order, I can simply just reorder them, putting red after blue and then text before the king. That's completely possible. And then since they are in a group, then when I click on this chevron arrow, or it shows the collapsed visual of the layer. And while it's selected, and I can go ahead and as a group, of course, I can toggle their visibility in unison. I can also move them together. However, well, we can't do anything that's any type of pixel adjustment here, like paint or erase. Will give this error message. It would recommend that we merge them if we would like to do that. And the good thing about being in a group is that if well, with this being collapsed, is that we can go ahead and just select the other layers inside. And let me go ahead and switch this to view. And they basically function like an individual layer, like this one. This copy is selected, which is this one, and I can still move that freely, independent of the other, regardless if they belong in the same group. Okay, and let me go ahead and undo all of that. By the way, okay, it's still grouped. If I were, for example, take this text copy and drag it all the way down here outside of the scope of the group, which we'll notice that it has more space from the eye. If I take the text like here on the blue box layer, then it gets taken out of the group. Just wanted to show you that. Okay, so I'm actually going to undo this. So here we see the history. Rather than doing Control Z all the time, we can go ahead and toggle this. Very effective. You can see, and here's the new group. Okay, so if I Control Z one more time, then okay, my mistake. Let me just select this. By the way, since it's off balance, I'm just going to Control 0, Control 1. Okay, there we go. So they're all ungrouped. Okay, let me just hide this. Control 1. Okay, in this case, I will be hiding the yellow background since I will be showing another type, a rather more permanent type of merging. And this one is, we basically click anywhere here and we select flatten image. It says to discard hidden layers, yes, as an example. And as you can see now, everything becomes one layer. And if you've noticed, it says background in italic, and there's the lock, which is the same property as the yellow icon when we started earlier. Well, it was a white icon. And if you notice here, previously it was transparent, but once I ended that, but once, let me redo that, but once we flatten it, it becomes solid white. The transparency doesn't carry over. So let me undo that. And then and then I'm going to show the merge layers again, but this time in the context of in contrast rather to the flattened image. So in this case, I'm going to select merge visible. You can see they are still one layer, and the yellow doesn't disappear. Didn't ask for us to discard the information. Okay, they are the same. And even though they are, even though it's destructive, the same layer, I'm sorry, a single layer, it keeps the transparency. So this actually would have more use, and if one was to save this as a PNG or a GIF, well, maybe, or a TIF, um, since it does keep the transparency, unlike the flattened image. Okay, let me just go ahead and undo that and up until the yellow. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to discuss is to lock layers. Originally, this one was already locked, and it says background, and we have unlocked it. But there are actually several ways of locking them. Although right now, this third item, it requires the artboard, which is for a different topic. So I will be discussing the other four. First, we do have the lock transparent pixels. Okay. For example, I select the default King's layer, and I, for some reason, decide to paint on it. Well, obviously it paints over the card, but it also paints on the area outside of it. Now, with the first copy of that layer, I am going to hit the lock icon, and what happens when I paint here, it still paints over the card, but doesn't paint on the area outside of it. Okay. Next up is well, once we hover the mouse long enough, it'll show the name, the lock image pixels, which just basically just means that we can't. Um, oh well, let me go ahead and show you another example. This one. That basically means that we just can't do anything with it. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Well, there we go. I selected the wrong lock. Okay, so so okay, so the layer is locked here. Same thing. If we were to erase it. Okay, and well, to unlock all of those, just let's just hit the same lock icon. The next item is the to lock the position. Well, I'm just going to stick with the copy here. There's the lock icon, and then I'm going to hit the move tool. If I were to select this, I can go ahead and move that. But here, it's not letting me, it's locked. So I go ahead and hit unlock. And this one is the most commonly used since it's the basically lock all. So we can't move it. We can't paint on it. And of course, once we release the lock, then once we select the same lock icon, then it becomes locked. Okay, with regards to saving the file earlier at the start of the day, we have noticed that there's nothing on there. It's just the drag items into this. So this time I'm going to save it. Of course, there's the save as. We can just select any title that we prefer, for example. And by default, it's PSD, which is the format for Photoshop. These two are PSDs, and it displays them as well. So I'm going to save them in this folder. Okay, let's just not mind that. Okay, so once I clear this out, Here are the recent works. I've opened this card earlier. That's why it's here. And now that's been saved, we can go on. We can go ahead and move on to layer masking. So I'm going to open this again. Okay, the second part of the discussion is for layer masks. Okay, first, let me go ahead and select the default king layer here. If I were to erase this, then indeed it gets, it's destructive editing, and of course, the picture gets erased or distorted. Okay, I hit undo that, but there's actually a way to do that non-destructively. If we look at the bottom here with the white box and the black circle, it would say add layer mask. And we can see on that same layer, another box is added. So this time, if we went ahead and erase this, and by the way, at this time, with the layer mask, it has to be inverted. Or actually, as a better example, I'm going to paint over this. Okay, same effect. It's distorted, but if we look at this box here, it was previously all white, but now there's a bit of black. So I go ahead and hold down the control and then the click, and whatever that, and these black strokes represents what how I swiped the paint over to that layer. So that, and the way it works is that with layer masks, black conceals or hides and white reveals. So if I were to invert this and then paint becomes white, and once I go ahead and hit Alt and then click here again, then it's whole, since I basically revealed what was previously concealed. Okay, as as a better example, let me just go ahead and zoom this. And let me just go ahead and switch this back to black. Okay, 50 is too big. I'm going to shrink this down. Okay, and again, to resize it, the left bracket arrow. Okay, so I'm at 9 points. I'm going to clear out these edges. And by the way, it always reveals what's at the bottom. Although in this case, the bottom is text, so it's not directly beneath it. But of course, the others are visible, so it displays that. It would display those. So I got so used to the rolling pin, but again, I can just hit enter and then just drag it. And then I can go ahead and Alt and the rolling pin to zoom it. Then Alt and then down to zoom it out for a bit. Hit and hold enter to move it up. Okay, and then Alt and rolling pin to zoom it, to clear these errors out. And that's not. Actually, you don't have to make it perfect. Okay, so we basically masked those 4 areas, and if I were to click, well, Alt click on this white icon, and I'm going to, by the way, the Control 0 or 1 shortcut still works here. These 4 points are the ones that I've painted. Those are the ones that I've hidden. Again, black hides, conceals, and white, well, if we were to select that, shows or reveals. I'm actually going to show another example. Let me just go ahead and clear out this file. No. Then I'll create a new. And only for this example, I'm going to select the 960 by 720p resolution. And then I'm going to open a couple of files. So it's Control O again. Okay, this one, I'm going to select this and this, and then hit open. Okay, these two files will show up. Of course, don't forget to unlock them. This is the default, and I'll hit V for the move tool. And then once again, like I did with the king layer there, I dragged it and I pasted it here. Now I do have the choice, since it has the same 720p resolution, to fit it into place. I know personally I could have just stacked it over here, but I feel like creating a new layer. So I drag it there, and then once I'm at that tab, I drag it here. Okay, so we have this. And of course, unclick the background. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, you may have an idea, since this one is the one that's displaying, which is basically this one. On top of this one, let me hide that, which is basically this one. Let me just go ahead and close these other layers. I'm not going to use them anymore for this example. So what I will do, well, normally I can just go ahead and erase it, but again, that's destructive. But in this case, I'm going to add a mask on the one at the top. Let me go ahead and go into this icon, the add layer mask. Okay, and with that added, I am going to paint, and then it's black, and black conceals. Basically, this entire unedited area is the whites, and we're going to conceal part of that to show what's at the bottom. So I'm going to, the circle is too small, it's only 9 points. I'm going to enlarge it, the right bracket. Let me go ahead and try to match it so I don't have to do too many strokes. Okay, I think that's large enough, but on the safe side. Okay, so I'm actually I'm actually concealing part of the image. And as we can see here, if I were to hit Control, Alt, and then click, it does show the area that I've hidden away or concealed. Thus, with this hidden away, this shows up. Okay, that's a more dynamic example of the layer masks. And what else? Am I forgetting something? Actually, yeah, about this lock icon. The way it normally works, let me go ahead and go back here. These two are in place, so if I were to move that, since I'm still moving the top icon, there's a hole in it because I've concealed that part, and it's of course over the other layer, since I'm sorry, it hides the bottle because it's the layer underneath. But if I were to unlink this, and if I I can go ahead and select either the normal layer or the mask right next to it. Right now I'm going to select the normal layer. And as you can see, even though I'm moving it and part of the this image at the bottom shows up, the layer stays in place. It doesn't get covered. And conversely, once I select it here, when I select the masked icon, once I move that, that actually shows the other, relative to the what I've hidden, it would show the other layers. As you can see, there's wind, so there's a bit of movement. So if, let me undo that. If I would like the other leaves, then I can just go ahead and paint them. So it would reflect the leaves of the other layer underneath. Okay, so those are those are the basics on layer masking. Okay, next up, I will let me open this. Briefly explain blend modes, although this is this can be a topic unto itself. This image is similar to the one that to the one that I've used previously, but with regards to the blend modes, actually, what's important is the layer at the bottom, which is the base, and the layer on top of it, which is the blend. And it gives several effects. The normal one is basically the normal one. There's no blend mode. At most, we can go ahead and decrease the opacity, but that's actually it. The next one is the dissolve, and initially nothing seems to change, but if we were to adjust the opacity, it kind of gives a noise or a grainy transition from the layer on top to the layer at the bottom. If you look at the bottom here, it's grayed out. So let me go ahead and pull this to 100. Okay, so let me then select the layer on top and bring that back to 100. Okay, with regards to the blend modes, basically they have their own groups. The first group, which the most common one is multiply. It basically hides away the white the whiteness or minimizes it, and it's mostly a dark effect. The second group is the inverted group of the previous one, where it mostly minimizes the black and gives a white effect. The third one, it depends on the gray, since this one deals more with contrast. If a part of the image is 50% above 50% gray, then it would lighten it. If that image is darker than 50% gray, it would darken it. Therefore, a more contrast type of group. And these groups, they have their own scientific and artistic applications, but they're rarely used. The first one uses the difference between the one at the bottom and the one at the top, the base and the blend. The second one prioritizes gray. The third one prioritizes black, and the last one prioritizes white. And for the last group, well, this is, let me just go ahead and show this instead of the one at the bottom. As you can see, okay, let me go ahead. We would have to select the top one for the blend to show up. Same thing here, more dark, more white, more contrast. Okay, the gray, the dark, the brightness. And here, basically on the layer on top, like for example, the hue, saturation, color, and luminosity. They're preserved. And other aspects of the other properties are used at the bottom part of the layer this group of blend. Okay, so that is actually my brief explanation on blend modes. Next is actually the last thing that I'll be discussing, which would be adjustment layers. So let me just go ahead and close this one. No, I'm not going to save it. Okay, as you can see, there's a transparent image. We already have two layers. Which one is the white background, and then this one has the gray box and the blue spray bottle. Okay, let me go ahead and select the V for move. And for this one, we're going to be discussing about adjustment layers, which in itself is a type of mask. And it's actually located here. Sorry, located here at the bottom, the circle with the yin and yang type of effect. And this one, basically, the way that this works is that with normal layers, well, let me just go ahead and select this one just to say. With normal layers, what we can do is to add and subtract to it, but with with normal masks, and that's what I meant to say. Sorry about that. Let me repeat that. Adjustment layers are another type of masking, but in this case, they can mask more than one layer. Again, normally with the regular masks, it's attached to a layer, and what we can do, we can hide and reveal aspects of that, but it's relative to the layer underneath it. You can get creative with it, but that's basically it's 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 also dependent on that. But with the adjustment layers, we can apply this mask. Like for example, this is brightness and contrast. And in the properties panel, we can make this brighter and add more contrast. As you can see, higher the contrast, it gives more detail. And then we can go ahead and add another adjustment layer. This time, let me go to the hue and saturation. Hue is basically the color. Okay, we can switch that around. Saturation is the intensity, and obviously lightness is how dark or bright it's going to be. Okay, let me go ahead and go with that. By the way, with these properties panel, once you select the this recycle type of icon, it resets back to default. But again, I'm going to. Okay, I'm content with this. Same thing here. There's the default icon should you wish to bring those back, or you can type 00 if that's what you prefer. Okay, the way this works is that this ladder icon is stacked. It affects this, but it's also stacked on top of the brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Conversely, I can go ahead and just switch that up, and then this time the brightness and contrast is stacked on top of the hue and saturation layer. Okay, and since we only have one layer, I am going to create another one, but not here. Okay. Okay, so we have this layer selected. I'm actually going to go ahead and create its own layer mask. Okay, with that selected, I'm going to choose the object selection tool. Let me go ahead and stop it right here. Okay, so this one is selected. So basically, let me go ahead and Control Alt and then click this one, and then hit. Okay, one moment. Let me repeat that. Oh, it auto selected it. So once again, actually, I'm just going to paint over that. Let me just go ahead and select this. Okay, this one's hidden. Then hit enter, or I deselect it. Okay, and then I'll click here. As you can see, I've hidden that away, but I'm actually going to create a copy. Control J, and then I'm going to select this part of the layer. Control clicked, and I'm going to invert it. So in this instance, you'll see what I mean in a bit. Okay, with this layer, everything else is hidden except for the bottle. And in this layer, well, the everything else is the box, the gray box. Okay, so why did I show this? Since we can actually, for example, let me just go ahead and move this layer above the other masking layer. Okay, the brightness and contrast. Actually, it still stacks on top of it. So as you can see, it does still affect everything. But if I were to copy this, which I'll just drag this mask into the mask on the one on top, that's actually the only thing that gets affected. Since, well, both are visible, as you can see the box, but in this instance, it hides everything else, so it will only apply its effect on the white, in this case, which is the bottle. Let me actually bring that back here. Okay, and same thing here. I'm going to hide this. Okay, replace layer mask and with the hue and saturation. It only affects the box, but not the bottle. Okay, but the thing is, if I turn this on again, the brightness and contrast, it will be stacked on top of all of this. So it's stacked on top of the 2 as well as the hue and saturation over here. Let me bring this back. Okay, so what we can actually, there's actually also a way for us to link a specific adjustment layer to a layer. Like for example, I'm just going to bring this down here first. Actually, let me just go ahead and bring this up here. Bring this up here, and then bring this up here. There you go. If we look at this button with the box with the down arrow, it will allow us to clip that adjustment layer into the layer. So in this case, the hue and saturation affects only the layer below, but not the other 2. So let me go ahead and give you that example. Okay, since the white is hidden, here's the saturation. That's the only thing that gets affected. And same here. Let me go ahead and hide this. Okay, so let me select this first and then hit this button to clip it. And then with the brightness and contrast, well, it affects the bottom. I'm sorry, it affects the box. And what if I drive a wedge and add a black and white adjustment layer? Actually, it got added in the middle because this was highlighted. Let me undo that and select none of those. And once again, select black and white so that it's introduced to the top. Okay, and let me make these visible. So that basically means that it's now stacked on top of everything. Okay, but here's the thing. You can clip, for a specific layer, there's more than one adjustment layer can be clicked onto it. I'm actually going to select the other one. The second one, since this one's colored, and I'd like to show you what I mean. Okay, with the black and white selected, let me hide this. It affects that, but anyway, it already doesn't have a color, so let me also show that here as an example. Hide this and show this instead. So it's black and white. So even if with the hue and saturation in here, doesn't really make a difference. Okay, but in this case, I will choose to, okay, to show the color there. Let me make this visible. I will choose to clip this to the, excuse me, to the layer below, which is the gray box. So there, you can do a lot of things with adjustment layers, which is indeed like another level of masking. And you can stack those on top of each other and still apply the usual masks, and then put those masks in the actual masks of the adjustment layers. It's crazy, but it's good. It really would test how good you are, especially if you have to work with more complex projects or more complex types of work. So that basically, let me go ahead and close this. Not going to be saving it. So that's actually it for my presentation right now. I do see that it's 9 p.m., but we started a bit late, so I apologize for the technical difficulties and enjoy the rest of the day.
Okay, hi everyone. Our floor is now open for questions. So if you have questions, feel free to post it in our comment section. Okay? Okay, once more, I'd like to invite everyone to join us in Adobe Community Philippines. Like and follow our page. And of course, we have our Facebook group, Adobe Educators Philippines, to all educators out there. And of course, we have our Adobe
Adobe
Photoshop
Educators
users
Philippines
Philippines to all educators out there. And of course, we have our Adobe
Adobe
Photoshop
Educators
users
Philippines to all educators out there. And of course, we have our Philippines to all educators out
Okay.
there. And of course, we have our uh, Philippines to all educators
Yeah,
out.
from Angelo. Yeah, nice. I learned something new even though I use Photoshop all the time. Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to post it in our comment section. Okay. Okay. Ayan, so Raymond, what's your advice to those who want to learn Photoshop?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, but
Okay.
medyo mahina.
Okay, I'm adjusting my mic here. Okay, so for those who wants to learn Photoshop, just go ahead and do it. Of course, as we know, Photoshop is a subscription program, but it's worth it. And it at least for me, it gives a feeling of self fulfillment. But of course, it's because it's not my line of work, but I really love it. Of course, for other people who use it all the time, it's like an everyday task. But there's a lot of things that can be done about it. Like for example, I also love drawing. I love art. So right now, I'm thinking how I could apply Photoshop with that. I may opt to go and buy a digital tablet, either with the ones with a display or not. But at least it gives me that creative juice. And I'm sure if you're contemplating art, um, then you can go ahead and have fun with it. That's what I can say.
Okay, so I think I'll be answering this question. How can I be certified in Adobe Photoshop or other softwares? Okay, so you need to have a exam voucher for you to take an exam. Okay, so once you have the voucher, you can contact us. Okay, and please do send us a message in facebook.com/mechaniweb. You can message our friends in mechaniweb for some details. Okay. Yeah, so you need to, I think, at least 240 hours using the software for you to get certified. So the certification is not only for Photoshop, we also have for Illustrator, After Effects, Premiere Pro. We also have a certification for that. And uh, I know two types yon. So certified associate and the certified expert. Okay, so dalawa yung klase ng certification ni Adobe. So, yung isang certificate is lifetime validity, while yung isa naman, nire-renew mo siya if you want to obtain the title. Okay, so please do send us a message if you want to learn more. Okay? Okay, and if inviting you to connect with us in LinkedIn, of course, connect with Sir Raymond in LinkedIn. I'll be posting the his link in the comment section, and of course, inviting you to join our pages as well for you to get updates on our upcoming Adobe training. Okay. Yeah, and to those who will watch the replay, the video is available in youtube.com/Adobe Community Philippines and in Adobe Community Philippines Facebook page. Okay? So the replay is available in our Facebook pages. Okay? Yeah. Okay, once more, thank you, Sir Raymond, for
Thank
this
you.
evening.
I've always watched you guys on Saturday and Sunday, and again, I love this community, and I would like to thank the opportunity for me to present. So again, I'll be supporting this community, and I'll be watching more of your content. And again, thanks, Nelsie, and to Sir Joe Mark.
Okay, thanks, Sir Raymond. And of course, if you have a talent to share to everyone who are watching right now, you can contact us if you want to be a volunteer guest sharer. Okay, so we are always open. You can contact us in our Facebook pages, MechaniWeb and Digital Creatives Philippines and Adobe Community Philippines. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Tomorrow is Monday. So, thanks everyone for joining. Have a wonderful night to all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Sir Raymond.